Okay, when you think about the big turning points of World War II, what comes to mind? Probably Stalingrad, D-Day, Midway, right? The classics. But what if I told you that one of the most important battles of the whole war was actually fought before it even officially kicked off in Europe? And that this one forgotten fight, well, it set a direct course for the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I know. It sounds a little out there, right? How could some obscure border skirmish in Mongolia, of all places, totally upend global strategy and drag America into the war? It seems impossible, but trust me, it's all connected, and we're going to unravel exactly how it happened.
And just so we're on the same page, this wasn't some little border incident. We're talking about a massive, undeclared war. I mean, think tanks, airplanes, tens of thousands of soldiers going at it on the border between Mongolia and the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo. And the wild thing is, it's a battle that's been almost completely forgotten by history.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with how this whole thing kicked off on the border. Then we'll look at how it blew up into a stalemate. After that, we'll see how a guy named Zhukov brought down the hammer. And finally, we'll connect all the dots from this battle right to the shores of Pearl Harbor.
So, yeah, how does a giant war just erupt in the middle of nowhere? Well, it all starts with a little piece of land nobody could agree on and an army that basically did whatever it wanted.
Okay, so you really have to understand the bigger picture here. The 1930s, Japan is on the move, big time. They grab Manchuria, then they push right into China. Now, the Soviets, they're watching all this and they're not happy. They sign a treaty to protect their ally, Mongolia. So the whole region is just a tinderbox, just waiting for a match. And that match was a river, the Khalkhin Gol, that no one could agree was the actual border.
And when this thing kicked off, it was a real tale of two armies. You've got Japan's Kwantung Army. These guys were famous for being super aggressive, almost a rogue force that didn't listen to Tokyo. Their whole philosophy was that pure fighting spirit could beat anything. The only problem was the guys on the ground, the 23rd Division, they were green and their gear was pretty much obsolete. And who are they facing? Well, the Soviets brought a massive, mechanized force, led by a name you'll definitely know from World War II, Georgy Zhukov.
And you know how this whole massive war started? It's almost comical. Not some grand invasion, but with a handful of Mongolian cavalrymen just trying to find a better patch of grass for their horses. They wander into this disputed zone, the Japanese-backed forces push them out, and then the Mongolians come back with more guys. And just like that, a tiny little argument over grazing rights is about to blow up into a full-scale war.
All right, so from a few guys on horseback to a total bloodbath, how did we get there? Let's dig into how this thing spiraled out of control.
At first, it actually looked like the Japanese had this. Their super aggressive tactics worked. They charged in, caught the Soviets and Mongolians completely by surprise, pushed them back, even grabbed some of their gear. For a hot minute there, it seemed like that whole fighting spirit idea was actually going to pay off.
But then the Soviets hit back, and they didn't bring spirit, they brought a whole lot of steel. Zhukov unleashes hundreds of tanks and armored cars, slamming into the Japanese flanks. And suddenly, those Japanese anti-tank guns, they were basically useless against the Soviet armor. The Japanese got pushed back, hard, and the whole thing just ground to a halt in this incredibly brutal stalemate.
And this is where we get to the really unglamorous but absolutely critical part of war: logistics. Getting stuff to the front. See, Zhukov put together this incredible fleet of more than 4,000 trucks to keep his army fed and armed. The Japanese, they had maybe 1,000, and a lot of those weren't even running right. So the Soviets could keep the fight going while the Japanese were literally running out of gas. I mean, this quote here really hits the nail on the head. You can have the most courageous fighters on the planet, but if you can't get them food, water, and bullets, you've already lost. And this massive supply failure, it was the Achilles heel for the Japanese. And believe me, Zhukov was about to target it with everything he had. Okay, so this is it, the turning point. You've got the Japanese stretched thin, running low on everything, and Zhukov is getting ready to drop the hammer. So when Zhukov shows up on the scene, he's got a crystal clear mission straight from Stalin: finish this, and not just win, but deliver a blow so devastating that the Japanese army wouldn't even think about messing with the Soviets again. And Zhukov, the very same guy who would go on to save Moscow and march into Berlin, he cooked up a plan for total, absolute annihilation. His plan? It was a textbook military masterpiece, but on a massive scale. Step 1, smash the Japanese right in the center with infantry to pin them down, make sure they can't go anywhere. Step 2, while they're stuck, send these huge armored wings sweeping around both sides. Step 3, snap the trap shut, encircling their entire 23rd Division. And Step 4, well, you can guess Step 4.
August 20th, at dawn, the sledgehammer comes down. The sky just erupts with a massive artillery barrage. Bombers are hitting them from the air. And then, the ground itself starts to tremble as almost 500 tanks and 50,000 soldiers charge forward. The Japanese had absolutely no clue this level of force was about to be unleashed on them.
And the result was just unbelievably fast and brutal. It only took 5 days for those pincers to slam shut. The entire Japanese 23rd Division was caught in the trap. They fought like hell to get out, but it was no use. By August 31st, the division was gone, just wiped out. Zhukov got the decisive victory Stalin wanted.
So, a ceasefire gets signed not long after that, ending the fighting. But the real shockwaves from this battle weren't felt on the battlefield. They were about to hit the top brass back in Tokyo, and they were going to hit hard.
You just can't overstate how shocking these numbers were to the Japanese leadership. I mean, look at this. In the last 10 days of the fight alone, they lost more than a third of their men. This wasn't just a loss, it was an absolute rout, a total humiliation. It was the cold, hard proof that fighting spirit shatters when it runs into a wall of Soviet tanks. All told, the final tally was somewhere around 20,000 casualties. 20,000 men lost in a war that wasn't even declared, a war that a rogue part of their own army had kicked off. You can imagine the fallout in Tokyo. The army got its nose bloodied, and badly, by the one enemy they thought they could push around.
So yeah, September 15th, the guns fall silent. The battle is officially over. But the real game, the strategic chess match, was just getting started. A huge piece of Japan's entire grand strategy was about to be knocked right off the board.
See, for a long time there was this really powerful idea in the Japanese army called Hokushin, or the Strike North doctrine. The whole plan was to push north, invade Soviet Siberia, and grab all of its incredible natural resources. We're talking oil, coal, iron, everything the Japanese Empire needed to survive and expand. This was supposed to be their ticket to the big leagues.
Well, the beatdown at Khalkhin Gol absolutely shattered that dream. This one battle proved, beyond any doubt, that the Soviet Red Army was just too powerful, too mechanized. It wasn't a target they could take. The Strike North guys were totally discredited. And so, if Japan couldn't get the resources they were starving for from the north, there was only one other direction to look: south, towards the oil in the Dutch East Indies and all the other resources in Southeast Asia.
And that, right there, is the mind-blowing legacy of this battle nobody talks about. Think about it. It had two massive, world-changing results. First, it guaranteed Japan would not attack the Soviet Union when Hitler invaded, which probably saved Stalin from a nightmare two-front war. And second, by forcing Japan's ambitions south, it aimed them like a missile, directly at the only other major power in the Pacific, the United States. A collision course that ended, as we all know, on a quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii.